So good day and welcome to the launch of the 2023 Global Labor Resilience Index. And I have the pleasure to be here today with Jennifer Blanke, who's a board member of several development-focused entities, including our Ltd, the Syngenta Foundation, and the International Science Program. She's former chief economist of the World Economic Forum and former vice president of the African Development Bank. Hello, Jennifer.
Lovely to be here, Anthony. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. And we have this all-important launch of the Global Labor Resilience Index edition 2023 today. And my first question to you, Jennifer, is why is it important for policymakers to be thinking about global labor market resilience?
Well, policymakers need to understand that labor market resilience is not just about how many workers have jobs at a given point in time. Instead, it is the result of a whole value chain of features that ranges from, the quality of education and training, to the structure of the labor market, to the technologies that are actually available to the workforce. And a weakness in one part of the chain erodes the effectiveness of all the other parts. So good policies and appropriate investments are needed throughout the chain. And policymakers really need to think much more holistically about what makes labor markets tick in order to prepare a resilient future workforce. So the index is a helpful tool because it helps policymakers by providing them with a bird's eye view of the overall system.
Very clear, Jennifer. Thank you.
Okay.
I also would like to know, what do you see as the main takeaways from the COVID-19 crisis in terms of labor market resilience and the future of work?
Well, I think for all of us, COVID was a real shock in so many ways, both bad, but also a bit of good, probably mostly bad. On the negative side, we've seen young people around the world losing years of schooling. Much of which they will never make up, or at least it will be very difficult for them to make up. And this is a bad unto itself and has exacerbated actually already prevalent inequalities, both within countries and also across countries. As we saw, some students could continue learning online, but this was hardly possible for so many others who lacked good internet connections or sufficient support at home. Perhaps even more devastatingly are all those young people, especially girls, in places like parts of sub-Saharan Africa, who were pulled out of school at the height of the crisis, and many of them will never return. And this has undone so many years of progress in educating girls. At the workplace, COVID also revealed stark differences between those who could continue working from home pretty seamlessly and the many others who either lost their jobs or they were frontline workers who had no choice but to expose themselves to the dangers of COVID in order to continue putting food on the table for their families. So those are some of the really big negatives that we saw. But as with all crises, there's been a silver lining for the world of work. For example, and I think this is something particularly that we've seen, lockdowns opened new opportunities for workers who were fortunate enough to actually be digitally connected, particularly in terms of more flexible working arrangements. And this has changed how we think about how and where we work. It hasn't been without hiccups, and many organizations are navigating and struggling to find ways of sort of balancing the workplace needs with the new flexible structures. But we've certainly learned a lot, and it's clear that such innovations will continue.
Excellent. And COVID-19 has also accelerated the digitalization of many aspects of our lives and livelihoods, and countries around the world have embarked on a path to greening their economies, as you know. So what would you advise to ensure that workers are prepared for the future of work in this particular context?
Well, COVID-19 significantly accelerated the shift to remote work arrangements, as we were just saying, as well as the gig economy. And this opened opportunities for many people. But we need to keep in mind that many workers continue to be locked out, either because they lack the needed knowledge and training, or sufficient connectivity, again, is a big issue. And if these are not addressed, inequalities would continue to hold economies back and erode social cohesion. So to prepare for the future, government policy interventions and investments are key. Governments need to ensure that schools have access to digital and other technologies and are imparting the skills and know-how required by the future workforce. And technologies need to reach much more of the population to ensure that those innovations then translate into broad-based prosperity. think for its part, the green economy requires revamped school curricula, at the university level, as well as, sort of high school and other schools, to foster the skills and expertise that are going to be needed in areas like waste management, ecology, material use, urban planning, inclusive finance, and so on. So, these are very important changes that we need to see happening across the world. For developing countries in particular, the new technologies and green economy provide huge opportunities for leapfrogging to more sophisticated skills and jobs, and also to helping them participate more fully in global labor markets. But they will need a lot of financial and technical support to get them there. Finally, I think governments just really need to recognize what they don't know, and to bring the private sector to discussions on devising appropriate curricula and investment programs. Private sector doesn't have a crystal ball, but at least they know what's needed now, and they have a sense of what's needed in the future a lot better than the government does often. So, this will help to ensure that schools are preparing tomorrow's workforce with the skills and technologies of tomorrow rather than those of yesterday.
Thank you, Jennifer. And I guess turning to the businesses and employers, how would you recommend that they boost workforce resilience in this COVID-19 post situation that we have?
I think beyond what we've already discussed in terms of the need of the private sector to be really giving input into curricula and a lot of what the government is deciding to invest in, as we've learned from the COVID experience, the private sector needs to find ways to translate crises into business innovations rather than catastrophes. By having strong risk management systems in place, as well as plans in place, organizations can really innovate and strengthen their business models. And for example, we saw something very interesting happening during COVID when companies in the food sector had to close their doors during lockdowns. Everybody thought this is going to be catastrophic, but so many of them found innovative ways to continue serving customers through digital and remote solutions. This helped them to keep their core staff active while allowing them to build new skills, and this was really translating into new business models that continue today. So I think really the right preparation and skills supported by the right technologies can be game changers for the private sector in what we're really seeing is going to be an increasingly competitive global labor market.
Thank you, Jennifer Blanke. It was a pleasure to have you for the launch of the 2023 Global Labor Resilience Index.
It was a pleasure being here. Thank you, Anthony.